I'm Evan Peckworth from Business Day and the Financial Mail, and we're joined by Richard Quest, world-famous business broadcaster and business traveller. Welcome, Richard.
One of the things that is always said about Africa is rising. Well, please tell me when it's risen, because there is no question that a continent that has offered so much opportunity but failed to deliver on, frankly, quite a spectacular scale, bearing in mind the amount of opportunity investment that has been put in. Now, the critics always say, well, it'll take time, you can't reverse a century or two of backwardness overnight, new policies. But I think that's slightly missing the point. There are still too many questions over Africa's transparency, over the questions of procurement, over the questions of policies, over the questions of democracy. It's time to actually make things better. You are very firmly putting the cart before the horse. You are looking for markets to do the jobs, where I say you have to go back even further. You've got to go back to things like good governance, transparency, the rule of law, shareholder rights. Before you have any of the, before you worry about whether the company is going to IPO, because what you're doing is you're fixating on the possibility of vast fortunes being made, markets rising and all that sort of stuff. But you're not going to get the investment. Oh, you're always going to get some companies coming in because there's a gravy train leaving the station and they want to be on board. That is not difficult. Being part of the African boom, particularly in resources, minerals, commodities and property. Look at the huge increase in property prices in some parts of the continent, the commercial property sector. That is not difficult. But being part of something that is a rising tide lifting all boats, your starting point has to be in good governance, transparency, rule of law, shareholder rights, proper securities regulations. Now let me ask you a question, sir. How many of the countries in Africa can hand on heart say they meet the standards on those issues? Tapering is working, and it's working better than as well as they expected. The next big issue for emerging markets is after tapering, we will move into this no man's land, what Janet Yellen has called the considerable period. That is between the end of tapering and the possible rise in interest rates. That is where emerging markets may find themselves once again at the whim of investors and speculators, because we will be in what could be a 6-month, 8-month, 12-month period where you're looking at the US data, because it's all data dependent. You're waiting for the Fed to move. You know you've got this vague phrase, considerable period, on the agenda, and everybody's working out what does that mean. And that is where I think emerging markets, India, Brazil, South Africa, not just only the BRICS, I mean, but other countries too, will feel the effect. We know that corporations are sitting on trillions of dollars on their bank accounts. Now, some corporations will sit on that just because there's nowhere else to put it. Others will be sitting on it because they'll use it as a defensive mechanism. Some, though, ultimately have to start spending it. So yes, I think there is the possibility of an M&A. I hate the word boom because a boom sounds derogatory. I think you will start to see more M&A activity, but one hopes that those involved have learnt the lessons of previous times. And when you get a frothy market, you get ill-considered deals. There is a fascinating role of central banks. The central bankers have been the only firemen who can put out the fire. And we have in many ways stretched the remit of the central banker to breaking point. What was it that saved the euro? Nah, it wasn't all the bailouts of Greece. It wasn't the six-pack, the two-pack, the fiscal compact. It wasn't the European Commission. It wasn't the midnight meetings. What saved the euro? One sentence by one man, Mario Draghi, president of the ECB, when he said to save the euro he would do whatever it takes. Monetary policy has been asked to do more than it should, more than it can, in more ways than it was ever intended to. On the other side of it, governments have failed to play their own part with fiscal policy. There I think South Africa, in terms of the business traveller, arguably falls down, and Africa definitely falls down. It's in A, the soft area, the soft infrastructure, visas, telco, internet, Wi-Fi, 4G, all the things that we're now starting to get used to. You don't want to have to get married and divorced waiting for a web page on your phone.